Quick question. In your opinion, which anime or manga power would be the worst to have in real life, and why? Let me know your answer in the comments below. Anyway, on to the video. Our story begins in a windy and dusty desert, and for some strange reason, there's a freaking apartment building just chilling in the middle of all that nothingness. Stranger still is the nerdy-looking Chad at the foot of the apartment building, just taking in the sights and getting his stalker vibe on. Of course, he has his hentai protagonist hairstyle on, so we know he's here for business. True to that thought, he scribbles something in his notebook before locking in on the zombie gym bro-looking guards at the entrance of the apartment. Noticing his gaze, the swole gym zombies take a beat before zeroing in on him as well. They flash a predatory smile, clearly delighted by the unexpected meal that had willingly delivered himself to them. Not that they were complaining, but what was a feeble-looking, probably tasty kid like him doing there? Could it be that he came to save the other guy they'd kidnapped earlier today? If so, then he was either insanely brave or stupid. Either way, they'd be having a feast today, so why should they care? They laughed out loud, obviously finding the whole situation hilarious. Unbeknownst to them, the Chad had dropped his hentai MC vibe and taken on an emo, I'm about to fuck your shit up vibe instead. Rocking that Dio Jojo stance, he hit them with Za Worldo, blitzing the shit out of their necks. The attack was so fast the gym bros didn't even know how they died. Over at the top floor, a feast was underway, with numerous human skulls piled on the banquet floor. The participants chanted the host's name, praising him for capturing another human for them to feast on. The leader, who low-key looked a little restarted with that lazy eye, soaked in the praise, telling the minions this much was nothing to him. If they stuck by him, he'd make sure to feed them their fill of human flesh. The minions were delighted by this, and glazed him even more. They celebrated their lungs out, until a foot stomp echoed through the room. With the stomp came a gloomy aura, a sharp contrast to the lively atmosphere of the banquet. This drew the leader's attention, and he immediately turned to scrutinize the new arrival. The same was true for the captured human, who couldn't hide his shock at the bizarre sight. Ignoring the prey's anxious fidgeting, the leader questioned his men. Why was a human there? And how come the guards at the entrance didn't capture him? Could it be that those lazy bastards were slacking off again? He wanted to curse them out, but a sudden thumping sound made him choke on his words. Before him were the heads of his guards, a sight that made him glare in rage. He unleashed his killing intent, terrifying everyone with the intense pressure. Just as he was about to lunge into battle, a soft voice called out, asking to be excused. It inquired about Craven, and whether the mighty zombie could be found there. This blatant disregard enraged the leader, who was already at his limits with fury. He glared at the nerdy Chad, clearly feeling insulted by his nonchalance. Suppressing his brimming rage, the leader asked if he was there on a rescue mission. Had he come to rescue his friend? Was that why he was being so brazenly disrespectful? The nerd replied that that wasn't the case. In fact, he hadn't seen that man ever in his life. As he'd mentioned before, he was there for Craven, and that could be confirmed by the amazing and completely lifelike drawing he'd made of him. The leader glanced at the painting, and his anger flared even more. First of all, how was that an amazing drawing? He should get that bullshit, Mona Lisa wannabe trash out of his face. Second of all, if he wasn't there on a rescue mission, then why did he kill his men? The nerdy Chad looked at him calmly before answering. They were annoying. He killed them because they annoyed him. It was as simple as that. The nonchalant disregard sent the leader into a frenzy. He called out to his most trusted minion, ordering him to kill the intruder. In fact, he should make it painful. Only then would his hatred subside. The minion said bet and lunged forward. He spawned in front of the nerd, dicing his body into meat chunks. Under the leader's satisfied gaze and the captive's horrified expression, he performed a simple salute, confirming that the target had been eliminated. However, before he could finish his report, a sudden chill tingled down his spine, causing him to shiver in fear. He immediately turned around, only to witness a scene straight out of a horror film. The nerd, who had clearly been butchered, was now regenerating his body, piecing together like a grotesque jigsaw. He even had the leisure to throw shade, taunting the budget Zabuza that he couldn't kill him with just that. Before the budget shinobi could process what the hell was going on, our boy spawned behind him, yeeting the absolute shit out of him. The kick was so powerful that the homie checked out early, clearly intending to reunite with his beloved Haku. In any case, he was out of there, and even the leader's foolish face couldn't get him to come back. Speaking of the leader, his brain low-key lagged at the absurd sight, but he quickly pulled himself together, ordering his men to jump the fool. The men didn't hesitate and charged forward. They bellowed war cries, closing in on our boy with the quickness. To this, the Chad simply shot them a bored look before swinging his arm. The move made bones sprout from the ground, clearing a path as they barreled through the crowd. Before the minions could process what in the Kimimaro was going on, the nerd teleported before them, grabbed a bone, and boned the shit out of their comrade's face. Pause. This left the leader sweating, but of course our boy wouldn't stop on his account. He spawned behind another minion, cleaving the poor bastard in two. With that done, he tossed away the bone, clawed into his gut, and ripped out his innards. Using that as a whip, he cracked open a minion's skull before obliterating a second one with a downward smash. Realizing the innards were crumbling beyond repair, the Chad sighed in annoyance before tossing them away. He then dug into his ribcage, pulled out a couple of broken ribs, and slung them at the minions like some ghastly shurikens. Ignoring the terrified foes, our boy stabbed into his gut and ripped out another innard. He whipped it forward, clocking 3 minions in a single shot. As he did, his wound slowly regenerated, mending itself like a stitched seam pulling tight in reverse. The minions saw this and said, "Fuck that." They'd be insane to want more of that smoke. Too bad they were already in it, and our boy wouldn't let them go so easily. To their horror, the Chad flexed his fingers before conjuring, "I shit you not," a brain. He then yeeted it at a foe, cracking his head open like an egg. Summoning the tossed brain, he shrank it down and used it as a baseball. With a bone as the bat, he hit a home run, pulverizing the hell out of the second foe's head. Settling into that rhythm, he struck another hole-in-one, with the hole obviously being the gap left in the minions' heads. Again and again he let them things fly, sending the remaining foes ahead. When it was all said and done, the room settled into an unnerving silence, with the leader moving up the restarted spectrum. He had his mouth wide agape, clearly struggling to fathom what the hell had just happened. He wanted to curse out the Chad, but the homie spawned in front of him, causing him to choke on his words a second time. Visibly terrified, he stared at the MC, wondering how he'd moved so fast. In fact, even with his enhanced senses, he hadn't picked up on his movements at all. Unfortunately for him, our boy had no intention of satisfying his curiosity. He coolly ignored the puzzled expression and asked if he was Craven. Picking up on the bizarre gloom that had been hanging in the air ever since that question, the leader skillfully dodged it and asked a question of his own. Why was he looking for Craven? Although he was sweating bullets, he manned the hell up and asked anyway. The MC shot him the same bored expression before answering. He was looking for Craven because rumors had it that he would be able to kill him. The leader, who I'm assuming is Craven, heard his reply and lost his shit. Rumors. Who had been spreading such bullshit rumors about him? If he found the bastard who'd set this monster on him, he'd make sure to feed him a 2-piece combo. Before that, though, he should probably try to make it out of here alive. He swung at the MC, hoping to rock his shit a little bit. However, before he could complete his attack, green veins wrapped around him, trapping him in place. The veins were obviously from the MC, who'd lost interest after not receiving a reply. He tugged on them, shredding Craven's body into pieces. Witnessing all this, the captive shuddered in terror. Who was this monster, and how could he possibly kill so many zombies? In fact, was he even safe being left alone with this freak? He shot the MC a nervous glance, terrified by what could happen next. However, contrary to his delusional thoughts, the MC simply tore off his gag. He then asked the same question, seeking to ascertain Craven's location. The captive looked at him tensely before answering. The zombie he'd just clapped was Craven. The MC, clearly taken aback by this, stared at the corpse with his dead eyes. Who would have thought the rumored Craven would be that weak? Well, he was dead now, so he might as well continue with his quest. He stood up to leave, only to be held back by the captive. He'd wanted to ask for a favor, but the hollow look in the MC's eyes made him choke on his words. Suppressing his fear, he swallowed the request and bowed in gratitude. No matter what, The freak had still saved his life, so the least he could do was be grateful. The MC, however, waved off the gratitude and trudged off. He quickly disappeared from the captive's sight, finding himself back in the desert. As he did, he flipped open his notebook and slashed a cross through Craven's face, marking another failure, the weight of which will be revealed later. We also learn a bit of the world's lore, shedding light on why things are the way they are. Many years ago, a zombie virus spread, laying ruin to the entire planet. The majority of humans were turned into zombies, with only a pitiful few managing to survive. Among the millions of the infected, some began to evolve, mutating into intelligent zombie-human hybrids. He was one of the survivors, of course, but he wouldn't call himself lucky. For whatever reason, after Doomsday, he discovered he'd been cursed with immortality. Staring at the marked grave before him, the MC sighed in defeat and muttered an apology to his mother. He'd tried his best not to, but somehow, he had managed to survive yet again. Damn. Taking a break from the emo MC, we shift back to the apartment building where the captive is complaining his lungs out. He curses the MC, arguing that if he'd wanted to save him, he should have done it properly, god damn it. What was the point of rescuing him and still leaving him tied up? What a bastard. As he was grumbling to himself, a voice called out, referring to him as Mr. Kyuho. The captive, or rather, Kyuho, turned to face two new arrivals, his team leader and another colleague, Dongho. Visibly relieved to see that Kyuho was alive, Dongho quickly helped him out of his restraints, asking what had happened. How had he gotten captured? Kyuho replied that it was just bad luck. He'd visited the apartment building to scavenge for supplies, only to unexpectedly run into Craven. He didn't know if he should call it bad luck, but fortune was definitely ghosting his ass right now. As he told his story, the leader ignored him and focused on the room instead. She then called out to him, asking what the hell happened there. Kyuho, noticing the intensity in his leader's tone, didn't hide anything and told her about the MC. Of course, he didn't know his name, so he just referred to him as a badass student. The leader listened to his recount and told him to hold the fuck up. Was he trying to say that a student clapped all these cheeks, including Craven's? Pause. How was she supposed to believe that? Kyuho replied that it might sound impossible, but a student did indeed tenderize their shit. He came in swinging, effectively wiping out the entire horde. Realizing Kyuho was serious, the leader believed him and asked about the MC's location. Where had he trudged off to? To this, Kyuho simply lowered his head in shame. He shared that he'd wanted to inquire about that, but the hollow look in the MC's eyes made him shrink in fear. He didn't have the balls to ask after that terrifying sight. Joining the conversation, Dongho asked if the MC was a zombie human. Was that why Kyuho was so terrified? However, contrary to his speculation, Kyuho clarified that the MC was human. He might not have been all there upstairs, but he was indeed human. The leader listened to his recount as she tracked the MC's movements. There wasn't a lot to go off of, but she had enough to deduce a simple trail. Back in the forest, the MC was chilling, unaware he had people spying on him. Or maybe he knew, but he was too edgy to care. In any case, the stalkers were Kyuho and the gang, who'd managed to track him down. Eyeing the gloomy and downright emo MC, the leader confirmed with Kyuho if what he'd said was correct. Kyuho replied that it was, but why was she asking? Before he could get a response, the leader suddenly jetted out of the bushes, spawning beside the MC. She slashed her dagger at him, but of course, our boy dodged that, staring at her with a puzzled expression. Who was this bitch? And why was she attacking strangers so casually? To this, the leader flashed a beaming smile and complimented him sincerely. She'd truly wanted to kill him with that strike, but to think he'd dodged it? However, he was mistaken if he thought her slash was that simple. True to her words, a cut mark appeared on the MC's neck before his head was sent flying. He glanced at her in surprise for a moment before nonchalantly reaching out to reattach it. However, the leader had anticipated this and immediately opened fire. She let it rain on his head, effectively lighting his shit up. When she was done, she turned her gaze back to the MC, seemingly asking, "What will you do now?" The MC, as nonchalant as ever, simply reached into his neck and pulled out another head. This left the leader speechless, clearly trying to wrap her head around what the hell was going on. But after recalling Kyuho's story, she said, "Fuck it," and decided to go with the flow. She flashed another smile at the MC, marveling at his absurd immortality. Picking up on the leader's crazed expression, the MC decisively ignored the psycho. He told her to go away. He didn't appreciate people bothering him. The leader, however, said to hell with that and clocked him in the face. She then spun around, landing a nasty kick to his gut. Pressing the attack, she closed in on him and ruthlessly opened fire. She meant that shit too. Every shot was aimed for a headshot. To this, the MC finally stopped holding back and let it rip. He lashed out his vein tentacles, easily deflecting the bullets. To the leader's bewilderment, he shot her a mean glare, warning her to stop messing around. If she insisted on bothering him, then he'd have no choice but to kill her. The leader picked up on her cornered position and wisely backed down. Why wouldn't she, when her main goal had been achieved? However, she had things to do, so she immediately lunged forward. She instantly closed the gap between them, pressing her dagger to his neck. From that position, she brought up the topic she'd been meaning to discuss, one she'd been trying to probe with her earlier actions. How effective was his immortality? And to what extent could he regenerate? The question caught the MC off guard, as he hadn't expected her to ask that. However, as if sensing something, he immediately focused on his wound and how it hadn't completely healed yet. This surprised the MC, who grabbed it with a dazed look. He instantly understood the implications and quickly turned to face the leader. How had she done that? Realizing she had his attention, the leader opted to start with the formalities. She introduced herself as Lee Kyung, the captain of the lethal force. As for his question, it would naturally be answered if he joined them. Of course, she wasn't asking him to join for free. They would compensate him. Word on the street was that he was looking for a way to die. If he joined them, she'd make sure to grant his wish and find a way to kill him. Still struggling with the sudden bombshells, the MC asked for clarification. What did she mean they'd find a way to kill him? The leader replied that it was as she'd said, they'd delete his ass. They had a capable scientist on their side, and if it was that psycho, she was certain he would find a way to kill him for good. Case in point was the wound on his neck. She was certain nothing like that had ever happened to him, and it was all because of the knife she was holding. Well, the knife was the scientist's invention, so who knows what other miracles he could pull off. The MC thought about it, and for the first time, hope kindled in his heart. He looked at Kyung desperately, as if trying to hold on to this fleeting feeling. Realizing how desperate he was, Kyung flashed him a somber smile and asked for his name. She'd already introduced herself. Shouldn't he do the same? The MC looked at her and, for the first time since the story began, shared his name. He was Mirae On. Mirae. Kyung softly repeated his name and told him not to worry. They would mop up all the zombies in the world, reclaim all the lost lands, and when that was done, she would make sure to delete him. The bold words left Mirae dazed for a moment, and for the first time in a long while, he actually felt his heart beat. His hollow eyes lit up like never before, and the dying embers in his heart finally rekindled. After all that searching, he was finally so close to his wish. He could end it all and join her. He could finally die one day.